In this video, I'm going to be using a new feature of PlayPauseIt, which should allow me to make this video in a way that allows you to review the problems for simplifying and solving with exponents and give you additional practice with that. And based off of your responses, either give you more of a chance to, get a right answer, or to reach a point where it's going to be suggested to you to do some more review before proceeding on. So let's have a look at this, see if I can get this to work that way, and give you the additional practice that you need. So for the first problem, you're going to be asked is to take a number and raise it to a power. So in this case, what is 5 raised to the third power? Sorry, that's incorrect. 5 to the third power means I'm going to have 5 multiplied to itself 3 times. So when I do 5 to the third power, that means I'm going to have 5 times 5 times 5. 5 times 5, of course, is 25, so this becomes 25 times 5, and 25 times 5 is 125. So 5 to the third power is 125. Let's give the next one a try and see if you can handle this one better. Sorry, that's incorrect. 7 to the fifth power means I'm going to have 7 multiplied to itself 5 times. And now there's different ways you could group these multiplications together. So what I'm showing here is not the only way of organizing it. But I took this pair of 7s being multiplied and this pair of 7s being multiplied. And I made them 49s because 7 times 7 is 49. And this became 49 times 49 times 7. 49 times 49 is 2,401. So I have 2,401 times 7. And that becomes 16,807. So 7 to the fifth power is 16,807. Let's give this one last try and see how you could do with this one. Sorry, that was incorrect. 4 to the sixth power means I'm going to have 4 multiplied to itself 6 times. So I'm going to have the multiplication of 6 4s. Now each pair of 4s being multiplied together, and I do have 3 of those pairs here, is 16. So this could become 16 times 16 times 16. You could have chosen to group them differently, and that's fine. But that's the way I chose to group them for this. 16 times 16 is 256, so I have 256 times 16, because the 16 still sticks around. And that ends up becoming 4,096. Based on these results so far, it looks like you're having trouble understanding what it means to raise a number to an exponent. Good job, that was correct. Now let's try to see what happens if we take a negative number and raise it to a power. Sorry, that was incorrect. Now, I set this up the exact same way as I did with a positive number. So negative 3 raised to the fourth power means I'm going to have negative 3 multiplied to itself 4 times. So negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. We often use the parentheses with the negatives so you can make sure you know you're multiplying by the whole quantity, because it gets to be a little bit more problematic if you try to just put a negative 3 and then a multiplication and a minus sign, and that can get quite confusing. So we often use the parentheses so you know you are multiplying negative numbers. Well, each pair of negative 3's being multiplied together becomes 9. So this could be considered to be 9 times 9, and 9 times 9 is 81. So negative 3 to the fourth power is 81, much like 3 to the fourth power was 81 as well. And one of the things you want to keep in mind is whenever you're dealing with any number, negatives in this case, but any number raised to an even number power, it's always going to be positive. Whether this number was positive or negative, being raised to an even number power is going to make it positive. So with that in mind, let's try this next one. Sorry, that was incorrect. Negative 2 to the 8th power means I'm going to have negative 2 multiplied to itself 8 times. So there's 8 negative 2's being multiplied together here. Which means I basically have 4 pairs of negative 2's being multiplied together. Each pair is 4. Negative 2 times negative 2. Again, you could group these differently, but This is why, I mean, because of this, a negative times a negative is a positive. Each one of these becomes positive 4. Each 4 times 4 becomes 16. So this becomes a 16, this becomes a 16, and 16 times 16 is 256. So once again, having a negative raised to an even number power gives me a positive result. So let's give this one more try with this one. Sorry, that was incorrect. Negative 7 raised to the 6th power is the same thing as having negative 7 multiplied to itself 6 times. So there are 6 negative 7s being multiplied here. Each pair of negative 7s is a 49. So I basically have 3 49s being multiplied together. 49 times 49 is 2,401. So 2,401 times 49 becomes 117,649. So at this point, it seems as though you're having some difficulty raising negative exponents to a power, in particular, even numbered powers. That is correct. Good job. Now let's try it with an odd number power. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Negative 7 raised to the 3rd power, of course, means I'm going to have 3 negative 7s being multiplied together. Now, unlike the last example, I could pair up some of these negative 7s, but I only have one pair, and I have this extra one over here. So this pair of negative 7s would become a positive 49, which gives me a positive 49 times a negative 7. And that becomes a negative 343, because a positive times a negative is a negative. And so one of the things that was emphasized in the lesson you had prior is that if I have a negative number raised to an odd power, then the result should be negative. Whereas if it was raised to an even power, like the problem previous to this, you would have this being positive. So even exponents is going to give me a positive result for a negative base, and a odd number for the exponent is going to give me a negative result when I have a negative base. So with that in mind, try this next one. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Negative 2 raised to the 7th power means I'm going to have 7 negative 2's multiplied together. And I can come up with 3 pairs of negative 2's, but I'm going to have this extra one left over. Each pair of negative 2's being multiplied together becomes a 4. So I'm going to have 4 times 4 times 4 times negative 2. 4 times 4 times 4, if you work that out, whichever way you want to group them, that becomes 64. And 64 times a negative 2 is a negative 128. So once again, having a negative base raised to an odd power gives me a negative result. So this would be the same thing as me just taking 2 raising to the 7th power, and then just remember, because there was a negative here and this was odd, I would have a negative odd here. So let's give this one more try. Sorry, that is incorrect. Negative 4 raised to the 5th power means I'm going to have 5 negative 4's multiplied together. And again, I can come up with 2 pairs of those. So I'm going to have this pair be a 16, this pair be a 16. So 16 times 16 times negative 4. 16 times 16 is 256. And a positive 256 times a negative 4 becomes a negative 1024. So it seems as though you're having some difficulty taking negative numbers and raising them to odd exponents in this case. Good, that's a correct answer. So now let's look into using these exponents, but using them with other operations. So try this one and evaluate what this would equal. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. When I do problems like this, I have to be aware of the order of operations, which is sometimes just referred to as PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplications and divisions done from left to right, and additions and subtractions done from left to right. That's what the order of operations is. Sometimes you may have even heard of a mnemonic device. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I think there's other ones out there as well. So this basically tells us the order in which we have to evaluate things in a problem in order to make sure we come up with a consistent answer that everybody would get the same answer. So the first thing I would do is start with parentheses. Now, parentheses means if there's any operations occurring within parentheses, typically any of these other operations, the E, M, D, and AS, you would do those first. Although I do have parentheses in this problem, this parentheses is basically here because of the negative sign. I mean, I just have a single number in here. Same thing here. I mean, so this one's kind of showing that the -4 is being raised to a second power. This is kind of being shown that a -2 is being multiplied to a +5. So there's really nothing to do in the parenthesis part of this because, I do have just single values in there. So that would take me to my next stage, my exponent stage. And I do have an exponent here. So I'm going to work out that exponent. So I'm going to take the -4 and raise it to the second power, which gives me a +16. There's no other exponents, so now I move on next to multiplications and divisions, which are done from left to right. Well, I only really have one multiplication, no divisions, it's a multiplication, 5 times -2, which becomes a -10. So the problem now becomes 16 plus -10 minus 3. And then lastly, I do additions and subtractions as they appear from left to right. So I'm first going to do the 16 plus the -10. I'm not going to do the -10 minus 3. That's something different that I have to be aware of. So, -16 plus a -10 gives me a +6. So the problem is now 6 plus -3. And now this addition is just going to be 3. So the value for this expression that you were given was 3. So let's try a similar one and see how you do with this one. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Again, I have to make sure that I am following the order of operations. That's what allows there to be one and only one answer for this. So again, I'm going to look for parentheses first. Like the previous one, there's nothing going on inside the parentheses as far as any other operations going. I have a single number in here, 4. I have a single number in here, -3. This one having a number next to it is being used to indicate more of a multiplication. This one here is being used to both indicate a multiplication and that the number -3 is being raised to the third power. So there's really nothing to do with the parentheses stage here because there's no operations occurring in there that I have to take care of first. So then I would just move on to the next one, exponents. And I do have an exponent, so I took -3 and raised it to the third power, and any negative number raised to an odd power is going to give me a negative result. So -3 cubed is a -27. There's no other exponents, so I move on to multiplications and divisions as I come across them from left to right. So the first multiplication I come across is the 8 times 4, which gives me the 32. Now I have a plus sign, and I have a 7 times -27. Well, 7 times -27 is a -189. And of course the plus 15 just gets brought down because there's no other multiplications and divisions. So now I have 32 plus -189 plus 15. And so now I go to my last stages for the order of operations. I do any additions and subtractions from left to right. So I first do the 32 plus -189 to get a -157. So I have -157 plus 15, and -157 plus 15 becomes a -142. Based off of the results so far, it seems as though you're having some difficulty understanding the basics of the order of operations. That is correct. Good job. So let's try a slightly more challenging algebraic expression, or numeric expression, I should say. Evaluate this one for me. Sorry, that is incorrect. Now, as before, I do have to make sure that I'm aware of the order of operations and that I do follow them. So, now compared to the previous example, when I do the parentheses stage here, I actually do have things occurring inside the parentheses. I have an addition occurring inside this one and a subtraction, so I carry those through first. So 7 plus 2 is 9, and 6 minus 8 is -2. So that's what I do for the parentheses stage. There's nothing, now that I just have single values in the parentheses, I'm going to keep the parentheses, but now that I just have single values in there, I've taken care of that. So now I'm going to move on to exponents, which I did have this square here. So negative 2 squared is 4. And there's nothing else dealing with exponents, so that finishes that stage. So I now have 5 times 9 minus 4 times 4 plus 8. So now I'm going to take care of any multiplications and divisions from left to right. And I did have two multiplications, a 5 times 9, which is 45, and a 4 times 4, which is 16. Notice I'm keeping the signs there. So this problem now is 45 minus 16 plus 8. And now I'm going to handle my additions and subtractions from left to right. So I deal with the 45 minus 16 first. Some students think that addition and subtraction means I handle additions first and subtractions. That's not the case. They're both considered to have the same precedence in the order of operations. So whichever one I come to first, going from left to right. So the subtraction gets done first. 45 minus 16 is 29. And 29 plus 8 is 37. So let's give a similar problem a try and see if you understand the concepts this time around. Sorry, that is incorrect. Again, following the order of operations, I'm going to take care of anything inside the parenthesis first. And I do have a set of parentheses. And so this 4 minus 8 is going to get done first, and 4 minus 8 is a negative 4. Now, although I do have another set of parentheses, I just have a single value in there, and it's basically being used to indicate a multiplication here. So, there's nothing to do inside the parentheses, so I'm done with that stage. Now I'm going to move on to any exponents, which I do have an exponent here. So when I take care of the exponent, I'm going to take negative 4 and square it and get 16. Keep track of your signs. I'm just focusing on the negative 4 being squared. The minus sign is acting as a subtraction, which I'm not going to deal with yet because I'm not at that stage in the order of operations. So it's the negative 4 being squared, which gives me a subtraction of a positive 16, if you will. So there's no other exponents, so now I move on to any multiplications and divisions as I go from left to right. I only have one multiplication in the problem. It's 7 times 5, so 7 times 5 is 35. So I have 35 minus 16 plus 9. So all I have are additions and subtractions left. Now, the additions and subtractions I do from left to right. So I do with 35 minus 16 first, which gives me 19. So 19 plus 9 is what this becomes. And 19 plus 9 becomes 28. Based on the results thus far, you are getting stuck on situations where there is simplification you have to do inside the parentheses and handle the parentheses stage of the order of operations. Good job, that is correct. So let's try a slightly more challenging example. See what you can do with this one. I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Again, if I'm following the order of operations, I'm going to take care of anything that's inside parentheses first. Now, I have parentheses all over the place on this. But the only parentheses I really can be concerned about in the first stage is the negative 3 minus 2, because each one of these parentheses only has a single value inside of it, so there's nothing to simplify. The parentheses here are basically being used because I have negatives involved and I want to show a multiplication. Basically using the parentheses here to indicate a multiplication as well. So the only thing I'm going to be doing in the parentheses stage is the negative 3 minus 2, which is negative 5. And now I'm going to take care of the exponents. There is an exponent right here, the square, so I'm going to take negative 5 and square it. Everything else is going to be left alone. So negative 5 squared is 25. And what you can see now, once I got that 25, is that I do have one grouping of multiplication over here, one grouping of multiplication over here, and then an addition. Now, according to the order of operations, I'm going to handle the multiplications first, because multiplications and divisions are next. But again, I'm going to make sure I'm doing them from left to right. So 5 times negative 2 becomes negative 10. Negative 10 times negative 3 becomes a positive 30. I'm still going to have my plus sign. 4 times 25 is 100, so I have 100 times 2, and 100 times 2 is 200. And so now I go to my addition and subtraction, which I only have an addition. It's going to end up being 230. So let's try a similar problem to see if you can now understand this process a little bit better. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. So again, I have to be really careful that I am following this order of operations the way it's intended to be followed. So I'm going to take care of any operations in the parentheses first. Now, over here, -3 and -4, there's nothing to do inside those parentheses. They're basically there because of the negative signs, and I want to indicate some multiplication going on. I don't want it to be confused with 7 minus 4 minus 3, which is something totally different. So the parentheses here are being used to indicate multiplications of negatives. I do have an operation of subtraction inside this 2 minus 5 right here. So it means that subtraction is going to get done first because I have parentheses around it. So 2 minus 5 is a -3. So 4 times -3 cubed plus 7 times -4 times -3. Now I move on to the exponents, and I do have an exponent here. So I'm going to take -3 and raise it to the third power to take care of my exponent stage. So it's going to give you 4 times -27 plus 7 times -4 times -3. So here I have a group of I have a multiplication here in a group. I have a group of multiplications going on here, separated by an addition sign. And of course, the order of operations state that I have to do my multiplications and divisions next, and for going from left to right. So I'm going to do the 4 times -27 first to get -108. The plus sign is going to be brought down. 7 times -24 is a -28. So I have -28 times -3. I still have to carry through that multiplication. -28 times a -3 becomes a +84. So I have -108 plus 84, and the only thing I have left is an addition, which is the last thing I do. So that's going to be a -24 as a result. Based off of these results, it seems as though you're having some difficulties with, um, more advanced circumstances dealing with the order of operations and evaluating expressions where exponents are involved. Very good, that is correct. Now let's take this up one more level and let's see what we have to do in circumstances where we have variables involved, but we're told what those variables equal. So in this case here, you're given it a is 3 and b is -5. Evaluate this expression a minus 7 to the third power plus b squared. I'm sorry, that was incorrect. The only difference with problems like this is that I do have one additional step before I start worrying about evaluating the expression and following the order of operations, and that is I have to make sure that I am substituting the correct numbers in for the correct spaces here. So knowing that a equals 3 and b equals -5, I'm going to replace a with a 3. I'm going to replace b with a -5. And oftentimes when I'm substituting in a number that's negative, in particular, I'm going to make use of parentheses. There are some instances where I'm going to do the same thing for a positive, especially if one of these letters, one of these variables are being multiplied to something. I would do the same thing. So now I have a numeric expression, and I can start following my order of operations. So I'm going to take care of anything inside of a parentheses first. And as you can see, I do have the 3 minus 7 inside this set of parentheses, so I carry through that subtraction and get a -4. There's nothing that goes on in this parentheses because it's just a single number in there. So I've taken care of that stage. Now I move on to exponents, and I do actually have two different exponents here. So each one of them is going to be evaluated. So -4 to the third power is going to give me a -64. Again, if I take a negative number, raise it to an odd numbered power, I should get a negative result. And of course, 4 cubed is 64. On the other hand, when I take -5 and raise it to the second power, it's an even power, so I do expect it to be a positive result. So plus a positive 25. I would then move on to any multiplications or divisions, but I don't have any. The multiplications and divisions are, they're non-existent here. So I would go on to the last stage, my additions and subtractions, and -64 plus 25 equals a -39. So let's see if you could try this again, and correctly evaluate this expression under these circumstances. Sorry, that was incorrect. Again, the first step I have to do in this problem is I have to make sure that the -2 gets substituted in where A is and 4 gets substituted where B is. So this is going to become -2 raised to the third power plus 4 minus 1 squared. And so now I have a numeric expression. I can now start using the order of operations to evaluate it. So I'm going to take care of any operations inside the parentheses first. The 4 minus 1 becomes a 3. Again, this -2, nothing's going to happen because that is a single value. There's nothing to do. Basically, the parentheses are basically being used here to show that you are cubing a negative number and not, taking 2 cubed and then negating it. So now I'm going to move on to the exponents. And I do have 2 exponents to evaluate. So I do this exponent here. I'm going to have -8. When I take 3 squared, I'm going to have a positive 9. So I have -8 plus 9. And as we can see, there are no multiplications and divisions, so I just, look to see if there are any. There aren't any. So I now move on to the addition and the subtractions, which I do have a -8 plus 9, and that is a positive 1. So let's give this kind of situation one more chance. Sorry, that is incorrect. Now again, the first thing I have to do before I do anything else is substitute correctly. So A is going to be replaced with a 3, B is going to be replaced with a 5. So I'm going to have, in this case, 3 minus 5 quantity squared plus 4. So following my order of operations, parentheses get done first. So inside this parentheses here, I have 3 minus 5. So 3 minus 5 is going to become a -2. So I have -2 squared plus 4. I now deal with any exponents next. I do have an exponent here, so I'm going to take -2 and square it, which gives me 4. And I'm going to add the 4 following because it's just, it's still there from before. Again, there's no multiplications and divisions in this particular instance. So, I look to see if there are any, and there aren't. So let's move on to the next one, and the last one, and I'm going to do any additions or subtractions, which means the 4 plus 4 becomes 8. So based off these results, it seems that you're having a little bit of difficulty in circumstances where you have to substitute values into an expression before evaluating it. Good job, that was correct. So let's try another version of this situation where you substitute values into an expression. Evaluate this expression when x is -5 and y is -4. And you have x cubed minus 3 over y. So give this a try, and we'll go through it if you need it. I'm sorry, that is incorrect. For this circumstance here, again, I'm going to have to make sure at first I substitute correctly. So the x is going to get replaced with a -5. The y is going to get replaced with a -4. And out of force of habit, and it's a habit that I recommend you getting into too, is especially when you substitute in negatives, it's a good idea to use parentheses for those. So I have -5 raised to the third power minus 3 over -4. Now the over, or the fraction bar, is a division. The thing I have to keep in mind about division is, like, when I do my order of operations, not only is this fraction bar acting as a division symbol, it's actually acting as a grouping symbol, because what's actually going on here is that top is actually grouped together. And with that top is grouped together, I'm going to start evaluating what's inside this set of parentheses first. So when I do the parentheses part, and I'm trying to take care of this outermost parentheses I marked in blue. I mean, the innermost parentheses, I don't really have anything going on. They're just single values. So what I want to do for this is I want to say, okay, well, I'm going to take -5 and raise it to the third power. And so that -5 to the third power becomes a -125. So I have -125 minus 3. And I'm looking to do any multiplications and divisions. I don't have any multiplications and divisions. So, checking that out, None of those exist, so I move on to any additions or subtractions. Now notice this P is still lit up here, and the reason is I'm still working on trying to take care of what's in this parentheses. So I'm going to do the negative 125 minus 3 now, and I get a negative 128 when I do my subtraction that's on top. All that work I just did, although I went through exponents, multiplication, division, and addition and subtractions, was so I could finish the parenthesis part, to finish what's up here. So essentially, I now have a negative 128 divided by a negative 4, and that finishes my parenthesis stage. Now I look for any additional exponents that aren't involved inside of a parenthesis. There aren't any. So I look for any multiplications and divisions that are occurring. In the multiplication and division here, the division of negative 128 divided by negative 4 gives me a 32. And I have an answer here. I should check to see if there's any additions or subtractions. There aren't any. So that is my final answer. So give this similar problem a try. For x equals 10 and y equals 3, what is x plus 4 over 2 minus y squared? Sorry, that is incorrect. So once again, I have to make sure that I'm substituting correctly first. And so when I substitute this in, I'm going to have the x being 10 and the y being a 3. So everything is substituted incorrectly, but again, when I start doing my order of operations, I have to keep in mind that, the 10 plus 4 on top is grouped together, and the 2 minus 3 squared on the bottom is grouped together. They're given special names, numerator and denominator. Well, before I carry through a division, I have to have a single value for the numerator and a single value for the denominator. So I'm going to follow my order of operations now to simplify what's in these parentheses. So I looked for any x. So as I do my parentheses, and these are still here, I'm now going to take the exponent and down here and make that a 9. So the 10 plus 4 on top is still the same. The 2 minus 9 on the bottom is, the result of having a 3 squared evaluated to be 9. Now I look for any multiplications and divisions that occur inside the parentheses. There aren't any. I have an addition up here. I have a subtraction down here. I do have a division, but I haven't gotten this to a point where I've cleared these parentheses. I'm still working in this parentheses stage here. So I'm not ready to do this division yet because I haven't taken care of getting single values inside these parentheses. But now inside these parentheses, I do have an addition up here and a subtraction. So when I do my addition and subtraction, the top becomes a 14, the bottom becomes a negative 7. So essentially now, taking care of this, my parentheses stage has been taken care of because now I have 14 divided by negative 7. So now I look for any exponents. There aren't any. Now I look at it for multiplications and divisions. I do have a division, 14 divided by negative 7, which is negative 2. And so, that's basically the final answer. Yes, I should check for any additions or subtractions. Well, there aren't any because all I have is just a single value. And so that's the end of it. So the answer for this is negative 2. So let's give this one more shot. When x is 6 and y is 3, what is y minus x to the 4th power divided by 3x? Sorry, that is incorrect. So as I do this problem again, the first step I have to make sure I do correctly is substitute. So when I substitute this in, I'm going to put a 3 in for the y, and I have an x up here and an x down here. Each one of them becomes a 6. So if you have a variable appearing multiple times, and it's the same variable, you're going to plug the same number in both cases. Now I'm ready to start doing my order of operations, but again, I have to keep in mind that I do have this set of parentheses on top that's grouped together, which I already kind of have up there, but I want to keep in mind that this 4th power is also involved, and I want to take care of what's on the bottom here. So when I start dealing with parentheses, now I have a set of parentheses inside of another set of parentheses. I deal with the innermost first. So 3 minus 6 is a negative 3 to the fourth power. So negative 3 to the fourth power, which takes care of simplifying this innermost parenthesis, but I still have this outermost parenthesis I have to deal with here. And I still have, this multiplication occurring inside of this group of parentheses. So I'm not done with the parentheses stage yet. I have to carry through the operations following the rest of the order of operations until I get a single number up here and a single number down here. So I'm going to look for any exponents next. Well, negative 3 to the fourth power becomes an 81. So I do have a single value up in the numerator. That's good. I'm not done yet because of the fact that, I still don't have just a single value down here. I have a multiplication going on down here. So I'm still working in the parentheses stage here, but now I'm looking for any multiplications and divisions inside the parentheses, and I do have that multiplication. So I have 81 over 18. Now I should double check to make sure there's no additions or subtractions going on that are inside parentheses. There aren't. So at this point, I'm done with the parentheses stage when I get to 81 divided by 18. So now I look for any exponents. There aren't any. At least none left now. So there's no more exponents to take care of, so I move on. And any multiplications and divisions from left to right. I do have one division. 81 divided by 18 becomes 4.5. And since I have a single number now, I don't really have to go any further. I should check to see if there's any additions or subtractions. Obviously, I don't have any. So, this is the end of the problem. So the answer for this is 4.5. If you got into this part here, you got through most of this, but you weren't able to earn all the points necessary to reach a point to say that you understand this material. Good job, that was correct. This is now the end of the presentation. If you found out that you did not earn all the points for this presentation, then you should definitely make sure to go back, go through the material again, and retry this so that you can progress further until you do finish it. If you've finished this and gotten 8 points on this, then you understand the material and can definitely move on. In either case, if there are any questions, please make sure to ask your teacher about it. Until next time, have a good day.